special to Art and I. When we started this gallery, it's a rare opportunity to actually go out and search for artists in estates that you want to work with. And we found William Perehudoff. We did some research. He is very well known all over Canada. And we found this artist that we thought was incredible, and we opened our first exhibition at this gallery in 2013 with William Perehudoff, and it was a wonderful show, and it was a great success in terms of sales, in terms of boosting our confidence as gallerists, and so now this is our third show of his work. And I think, looking at the paintings, you'll see that Perehudoff, having many galleries in Canada, is in every public collection in Canada, museum, library, everywhere, and we are now bringing the word to the United States. We're thrilled tonight to have WIlkin with us. She did the retrospective of William Perehudoff that toured for 2 years around Canada to major museums. Beautiful exhibition catalog that we have at the front desk. And we felt like if there was anyone that was going to talk about Perehudoff, it had to be Karen. There is no one else. We're all going to learn so much tonight. We've done 3 shows, and there's much more to know. Do I need to introduce you? I think everyone knows that. I think every person here is because of you. But it's important to know that, as you know, Karen is on our team, and we are grateful for you and appreciate all you've done for us. And really, she was sort of, you were the person who said to the Perehudoffs, go ahead and work with these women. And so we're grateful to you for giving us that thumbs up. And so I'll turn it over to you, but you all know Karen WIlkin, so thank you.
Gallery. I mean, it's one of the places where you can really see painting. And that's getting to be rarer and rarer, in spite of the fact that more and more young artists seem to be painting. So maybe the galleries will catch up. But this is not a young artist. This is part of the great generation of color painters in the second half of the 20th century. And someone asked me why he remained hidden. Well, he wasn't hidden. In Canada, he was enormously conspicuous. And as Christine said, he's in every major museum and lots of public collections and lots of private collections. And he showed in New York some years ago. He showed in London. He showed all over Canada. So he's not exactly unknown except now. But he isn't unknown thanks to Barry Campbell. Bill Perehudoff is a real phenomenon. I've written a certain amount about self-taught artists, and the big question is always, well, what might make somebody make art? And I've quoted a number of times something that André Campbell wrote in the 50s when he published his book, The Voices of Silence, which was once read a lot, in which he really very presciently talked about the museum without walls, because of photography, that you get images from all over brought together. He couldn't imagine the internet, but it really fulfills what he says in the book. And the question he asks is, what makes an artist? His answer is that a young person at an impressionable age is more moved, more fascinated by a work of art than by whatever that work of art refers to. So the work of art is more important than the natural world, the physical world, the real world. Well, it sounds great as an idea. And it turns out that idea came from, Campbell wrote this just about the time that they were doing experiments with, I think it was goslings, about animal imprinting, that a gosling that hatches out of an egg will follow the first thing it sees and assume that's its mother, and it doesn't matter whether it's a goose, a dog, a person. So a young person sees a work of art and is imprinted like a gosling. The only thing is that doesn't work if you're dealing with artists or young people who grow up without seeing works of art. And there are countless major artists, both schooled and unschooled, who you could describe that way. Bill Perehudoff's one of them. He was born in rural Saskatchewan in 1918 on a Doukhobor farm. This is a pacifist Russian community. Tolstoy's widow helped them get to Canada. Part of Tolstoy's utopian pacifism. And the farmland was owned communally. Bill grew up speaking Russian. The only beautiful things he saw were the painted furniture in the house and the prairie, which was huge, and in the summer, big fields of blue flowering flax, big fields of yellow flowering, I'm told is now called canola. It used to be called rape. I guess the Me Too movement has gotten to that. The fields, the whole landscape becomes yellow, becomes blue, and patched with little bodies of water, little temporary ponds that reflect the sky, and this enormous sky. But did he see works of art? No. At school, he saw some things in reproduction. But there are early watercolor portraits done when he was still a student of his family. You'd swear this is someone who was schooled in photos, the way he used color. Now, once he got older and he started going to more sophisticated schools, he was exposed to works of art, and he was very, very quickly knew he wanted to make art. Through one of the local very wealthy businessmen who was also a major collector, he got to go to study with a mural painter in Colorado, someone who had worked with the Mexican muralists. Obviously, if you grow up in a utopian Russian-speaking community, this suggests a little socialism. So murals are the people's art. And he wanted to do that. And he worked with this man called Shadow, who also knew Ozonpon, and came back to Saskatoon and was painting murals in the offices and the plant of the person who supported him. He got himself to New York for 2 years. He wanted to study with Hoffman, but the story he told me was that Hoffman was more expensive than Ozonpon, so he studied with Ozonpon. I tried this out on one of the former Hoffman students, Paul Ressinger. He said, that's absolute nonsense. If it was any good, he wouldn't have had to pay. I don't know. But Ozonpon had a very deep effect on him because, of course, Ozonpon was talking about significant form and the resonance of pure abstraction. And you can see what happened. This is the earliest painting in the show. That idea of the purity of geometric form and the ability of geometric form to communicate is something that resonated with Bill and remained part of his language for his entire life. The most recent painting in the show is can you see it from here? Well, this little one here and then that one, 91 and 98. So you can see he's still going to walk down the later one. He's dealing with geometry. But what is enlivening that geometry is this astonishing sense of color. And the longer I teach, the more convinced I am that you can teach people a lot of things. You can teach just about anybody how to draw. You can't teach someone how to use color. You either have it or you don't. I mean, yes, you can teach people how to do something that is, reasonably pleasing to the eye. But the kind of surprising color, that with unnameable colors that you look at, or colors that you think you can name, but they have changed completely by their context, you can't teach someone how to do that. And he had that, obviously, from day one. Bill supported himself as a commercial artist, a book designer. And that's something that is somehow very Canadian. There's a whole generation of Canadian artists, the first English-speaking modernists in Canada. The French-speaking gang were way ahead of them, so we found out about. The English-speaking modernists were known as the Group of Seven. And there were actually a lot more than 7 of them, but we'll leave that aside. And they were, to a man, commercial artists. That's how they supported themselves. And it was just how you did it. And that carried right on through to Jack Bush, who was older than Bill, but they became very good friends because they were both working as commercial artists. They were both abstract painters, passionately interested in color. And they both had 3 children. Bill had 3 boys. Bill had 3 girls. Jack had 3 boys. And they were very proud of the fact that they could support their families with their commercial art and be completely free in their painting and not have to please anyone. And they both continued working even after they were well established for their painting. That they were determined they were going to have that kind of stability. But as I say, it's a very Canadian thing. The other thing that was crucial to Perehudoff's development, we've already talked about the not being exposed to art, but even though there's obviously something that was impelling him to do this that had nothing to do with what he saw as a work of art as a young man. Art, or contemporary, no, I won't say contemporary, all art, whatever else it's about, is also about other art. And Saskatchewan does not sound like the most sophisticated place in the world. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan is a university town, I'll give you that, and a very pretty river valley. It has a totally disproportionate number of ambitious, serious, accomplished artists, many of whom are very well known outside of Canada, and certainly across Canada. Why? Well, because the art teacher at the University of Saskatchewan at the beginning of the 20th century, who came from England, because that's where culture came from, he liked to fish. In the summer, he would go north of Saskatoon to Emma Lake, where he fished. And his students would follow him to Emma Lake and paint landscapes. And that eventually became a legendary summer program, the Emma Lake Artist Workshops. And somewhere about, I think it was 1957, 3. Well,
that's probably in there. Yeah.
They decided, well, let's invite somebody good. And somebody really famous. Now, there have been many good and serious artists who had come up there. Will Barnett had been up there when he had a big influence. He was painting abstractly at that time. I think it was shortly after Will Barnett they decided, let's invite somebody very famous. And the notes from that meeting exist, and one of the names is Picasso. That didn't work out. But one of the other names is Barnett Newman. And Barnett Newman, when he received the invitation, is supposed to have said, where the hell is Saskatchewan? And who is Emma Lake? And I thought that was apocryphal, but I've been told to me by so many people who were there, I have to believe it. Well, the other thing you may know about Barnett Newman is that he was a devout socialist. He ran for office and lost on the Socialist Party ticket in New York. And at that time, Saskatchewan had a social credit government. And the reason Newman went was because he wanted to see what this looked like in action. You know, the hell with Emma Lake. But he had such a stimulating time working in this very, very poetic setting of on the edge of the lake, which is ringed with reeds, and the light changes all the time, and there's a heronry on the island, and bald eagles fly overhead, and the mosquitoes are fierce. But he is very, very passionate, talented, ambitious artist. So word got out, and every year for the next maybe 20 years, more, well past that, people came to work there and work side by side with the Saskatchewan artists. And artists from elsewhere in Canada and sometimes the U.S. would come up there as well, because word got out, this is a very exciting place. Frank Stella was there, Jules Olitsky, Kenneth Nolan, who became a very good friend of Bill Perehudoff, Anthony Caro, and then other people who you wouldn't expect, like John Cage. For a while they used to invite composers as well. Stefan Rolfe was up there. John Cage apparently got lost in the muskeg looking for magic mushrooms. But the really important thing was that an artist like Bill Perehudoff, instead of saying, oh, well, I'm in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I'm good enough for Saskatoon, was working side by side with Jules Olitsky, with Kenneth Nolan, with Frank Stella, and being treated like an equal, because he was an equal. And this raised the level of ambition and seriousness and achievement for the several generations of artists from Western Canada, and many of whom, and other people who came from Eastern Canada. It was a very, very exciting, very, very important event. And in 1982, when Anthony Caro, who had been at Emma Lake and made a very important body of sculpture up there in the woods, he had an opportunity to, he thought, organize a one-summer event modeled on Emma Lake. Well, it's still going. That's Triangle Arts Workshop, and it's modeled on Emma Lake. The same idea. Artists working side by side, stimulating each other, learning from each other. And Bill was very much the beneficiary of that, because he became friendly with the artists that he admired, and they learned from each other, and this is the kind of work that first really establishes reputation as an abstract painter. As you can see, the language remains very consistent, as I said, basically geometry, but with a twist. The other thing that he was very attuned to, like so many artists of his generation and after, is the physicality of the painting, the materiality of what he's working with. Because part of what these paintings are about is their history, the history of their making, how the paint went down, what the feeling of putting that brush stroke was like, or flooding that, or scraping this. Down on the floor, which is how you can control this kind of paint. And taking advantage of all the latest inventions with acrylic paint. These artists started working with acrylic very early on, as did their American equivalents, the color field painters, because they wanted to cover large areas of color, large areas of canvas with intense, undiluted color. Oil paint has to be diluted to spread. And when it gets diluted, it loses its intensity. Now you can keep glazing, but if you're not careful, it can go totally dead from glazing. So the great advantage of acrylic, which was developed as a commercial paint was that it was water soluble. You could cover large areas without it being dilute. Well, the people who were the real inventors of the most sophisticated artist acrylic, Golden's paint, Sam Golden, who had been a chemist for Beaucourt, retired and got bored and started his own paint company, was constantly responding to artists. We're saying, well, I really like the intensity, but I wish it was more transparent, or I'd like to be able to make it bigger, or, and they would do it. They're still doing it. And, I mean, they now own an oil paint company as well, but from what I know from the time I'm spending in studios with acrylic painters, there really isn't anything that you can't do with acrylic. And even in the benighted years of the beginning of this, when Bill Perehudoff was working, you can see how he has a whole range of surfaces and intensities and thicknesses because of the material. And that becomes part of his expressive palette. So he's got surface, he's got texture, he's got transparency, he has intensity of color, and of course, scale. And you'll notice that he's not working on the same size canvas. One of the last decisions is what the perimeter is. He's working on the floor. He's got a rough idea. I mean, obviously, there are the limits of the size of the canvas. But the decision about where this should be in relation to that edge is a last decision. It's like a photographer cropping. That's where it originated from. So he's keeping all his options open until the last possible minute. And he is working intuitively to create resonance and associations with color. I would argue very, very successful. You can see as you walk around here that he's constantly challenging himself and trying out new things. All of these paintings are parts of families of paintings. He didn't repeat things exactly, but he would, well, okay, I'm working with these big rectangles. What would happen if instead of coming in from the edge, I let that red go all the way to the top, and maybe not a red, maybe of something else. So he would push an idea further. And there are some, you can see some interrelationships here, but you have to imagine that these are all parts of series. And that's another part of the ideology, if you like, of the abstract color painters of this generation. That you didn't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And that a good idea was not exhausted by a single use. Of course, if you have a general format to start with, and you're really interested in interval and edge and color and surface, you don't have to think about the format as much. The most extreme case of that would be Campbell, who would get, he said once he figured out what the circle did, then he could think about color and interval and edge and all the things he was really interested in, until he got tired of the circle and started looking at horizontal bars and goes on like that. These are not, the series of Perehudoff paintings are never as definitely series as Nolan. But he is, like many other artists of the generation, exploring related ideas in a way that allows him to be even more inventive with other aspects of it. So we're looking at, this is 1960, that's my memory, 67. And the most recent of the works are the two Can we come down here to take a look at this is a 98 painting, so this is the most recent. And many of these last paintings always remind me of Russian constructivism. So maybe he's gone back to his Russian roots. He certainly was very aware of Russian constructivism. He and his wife, Dorothy Knowles, painted traveled quite a lot. They showed in London. They would travel whenever they had exhibitions, and they would do things like go to the British Museum and have all the Constable watercolors taken out for them to look at. They were very, very sophisticated about works of art. You can come in further. So, Ethan, you look beautiful again. So the last painting, and many of them are much bigger than this. I mean, even as he was approaching 90, he was still somehow getting down on the floor and painting. He was also a full-time farmer. He reassembled the family farm, which had been, I said the Duke of Bordeaux owned everything communally. Well, as the community changed, the farms were split up among the families. He had 3 brothers. So they were 2 brothers, so the 3 of them owned the land. He reassembled the family farm, which also happened to be on one of the most beautiful stretches of riverbank. I think that had a lot to do with it, because his wife, Dorothy Knowles, is the doyen of Canadian landscape painters, so she had a beautiful beautiful site to work from. And he built himself a studio and storage and what have you, what we call Perehudoff, and farmed full-time. Highly, highly respected farmer. And the guys around said, oh, he can take land that isn't worth anything and make it productive. And we used to tease him about that. He said, well, you have to do something while you're waiting for the paint to dry. And it was the 2 sides of him. They were coexisted completely. I mean, it's a combination of this immensely sophisticated, well-known painter with friends among internationally renowned painters, collectors all over the world, who was also celebrated for his ability to raise wheat. And it was very, very hard to put the 2 together, except Bill didn't talk much. He thought a lot, but he didn't talk much. And the phone would ring, he'd pick it up, there'd be a silence. And then he'd say, it's Bill. And he'd say, well, you called me, I expect you to say something. There'd be another long silence. But in the studio, he was much more talkative, because he was talking about color and what those relationships were doing for him. The paintings in this room give you some idea of his experimental interests in thin stains, in thick areas, in the drama of the surface. But towards the end of his life, he went back to a much less complicated application. I think he had gotten so involved in the color itself that he, after this lifetime of exploration, that he just wanted to keep it simple and let the emotion of the color speak. But the way he thought about color was absolutely fascinating. I mean, I knew from conversations, of course, he and Nolan had a lot to say to each other. He and Jack Bush, another great colorist, had a lot to say to each other. He was a great admirer of Turner. He had Turner watercolors brought out for him in the National Gallery, in the British Museum as well. But he also read Goethe's color theory, which, as you know, is wacko. Sort of warm colors versus cool colors. Nothing to do with the normal color wheel. And it has to do with about calm and aggression. And he did a number of paintings based on Goethe's color theory. I don't know any modern painter who ever did that. I saw the paintings. I still don't understand Goethe's color theory, but Bill definitely was interested in it. So there's all kinds of things going on here in the guise of these very simple and straightforward paintings. He certainly was not going to give you any explication or any explanation. Compared to outside the studio, he was relatively talkative in the studio, but relatively is the operative word. And there's someone here who also knew Bill and can vouch for his ability to maintain very long silences. The paintings, I think, communicate a lot. And they are, as you can see, each one is a very, very different kind of experience in terms of mood, in terms of rhythm, in terms of the associations that they provoke. And it's all done, as you can see, with edges, color, placement, density. It's pretty exciting. And I'm very happy to see these paintings here. Bill would have been very happy to see these paintings. He did get to see his retrospective, came to see it, and was in a wheelchair at that time, but you got a smile out of him. That was a lot. But it was a very, very powerful moment, having him look at this history of his work. What you don't see here are his origins, which were figurative, which were related to Cubism. The mural paintings are recognizably figurative, but very stylized. And the getting to the geometry took a while. But this is the work you really wanted to be known by. And as I say, it's wonderful that it's here. And thank you, Barry Campbell, for showing serious painting. Yeah.
There are some small books on paper. Did you do much preparatory work?
I don't think it was really preparatory. Thank you. That's a good question. It wasn't that he would make a big painting from a small work. It was just trying out other ideas. I don't know any one-on-one, but this gives you some idea of the relationship of the families of this. And some of those tiny works on paper are just radish.
So these are examples or parts of families of paintings used to, like, so there are like 100 more.
Well, not, there might be 15 or 20 paintings which are about a thin, washy area with something more dramatic on top. They don't look exactly alike,
Right,
but they will be related in that way.
The stage of
It's not like Campbell doing concentric circles for 5 years until he got tired of that and wanted to see what happened if he pulled them and he straightened them out or turned out cat eyes. But there'll be, as I say, families.
Karen, has there been a retrospective of all of his work in the U.S.?
No, there hasn't. There hasn't. The show in Canada was a kind of summing up of a lifetime, and it went. I traveled for 2 years. It went all across the country.
of Canada.
Not here.
Of Canada, yeah.
A project.
We have the book. It's all there.
Good.
No, I was very moved to be asked to do it because I had done a show 20 years before that, a sort of little survey show. And Then I got asked if I do the full-scale retrospective with a Canadian colleague, Roland Navstard, who had been a very, very good, very informative essay in the book, and he dealt with the earlier work. So it was a collaborative project, and fortunately we did it while Bill was still around to take part. I mean, something that I've always felt about these paintings, and I think it's not just knowing what a taciturn person he was, and yet such a romantic painter. I think there's a real kind of, Apollonian, Dionysian thing going on here. Even in this very severe kind of geometry, the color is so lush. And that double aspect, I think, is a pretty important part. I mean, maybe that's the farmer and the painter. I don't know. But what's that thing in Oklahoma? The farmer and the cowman should be friends. It's not the same. Bill's theory was that when farmers in Canada stopped keeping cattle, they all became alcoholics. They didn't have enough to do in the winter. So he could paint in the winter, so that's it. Had a lot of theories like that. Yeah, it would be nice to see a retrospective here. And as I say, we can just reprint the book.
Yeah, that's true. But it would be nice to have one of the major museums retrospective.
There's a waiting list of people we'd like to see there.
That's true, Carol. As you are.
But this is a kind of, very good overview. There's only one major series that isn't represented here, and we were talking about that earlier, and I don't know whether it's because his daughters don't have any of those paintings. In the 1970s, he did some paintings that have the kind of atmospheric ground of this or this, and the paint's applied so that you get these horizontal overlaps, and then they're very thin lines of color, and they're very beautiful, and they were very avidly collected, so the girls may not have any. But you've got everything else.
That's in 3 rooms, 4 rooms.
They're probably hanging on to the concert.
I'm not sure. I mean, they were very interesting is the synergy between Bill and his wife. She, as I say, she's still alive. Dorothy's got to be in her 90s now. She had her 90th birthday 2 years ago.
At least 2 years ago.
Yeah. And she is painting landscapes. They range from so loose that they become almost expressionist to so precise that you think she's interviewed every single leaf. And fabulous watercolors. She started out as an abstract painter, and she really wanted to be a figurative painter. And the person who told her it was okay to paint landscapes was Clement Greenberg when he was at Campbell Lake. So much for Greenberg telling artists how to paint. So here, usually, 2 painters, it doesn't work. With a couple, I mean, they've got to make quite different kinds of work. Or a sculptor and a painter will sometimes work. But Bill and Dorothy, because their work was so different, were really very supportive of each other. And probably the most surprising thing I ever learned about him, I say he was a very serious, dedicated, I mean, he was a very likable guy, but he was closed within himself. I discovered Dorothy had won a scholarship as a young woman to go and study in England. And he upped and followed her and carried her off to Paris and married her. And it's a young Canadian painter, farmer with no money. This was pretty dramatic. And, she's still making wonderful paintings.
So he had an adventure.
Did you want to be showing figurative work, Christine?
We have discussed. Stranger things have happened in this gallery, for sure.
So that's a Apollonian
Yeah, exactly. There's a brochure up front, if anyone would like it, with a great biography and basic information, and wine and snacks. So please hang around for a
Walk
few
around and
minutes.
see all the
Yeah, and make sure you go to the back, 'cause